the City of Des Moines Plan and Zoning Commission. I will read our rules and procedures first. The Planning and Zoning Commission is, generally speaking, an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission other than site plans and subdivision plats, unless denials or conditional approvals thereof are appealed. Applicant will be given 10 minutes to present the request. Proponents and then opponents from the public are then allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. The applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal. The hearing will then be closed and the Commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the item under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless an individual present or a member of the Commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. Could we have a motion to approve the minutes from the June 6th meeting?
I'll move approval.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion is approved. Okay, I will now read through the consent agenda. First item is city-initiated request to add the east prefix to the name of 2 Calder Court cul-de-sac street segments, thereby renaming both East Calder Court. The cul-de-sacs are located to the west and southeast of Southeast 23rd Street between East Park to the north and Evergreen Avenue to the south. Is there anyone in the audience this evening that wants to hear this item discussed? Anyone on the commission? Okay, item 1 will stay on consent. Item 2 is a request from Tasty King of Iowa, represented by Neil Thompson, for the following regarding the property located at 205 University Avenue. A, determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with Plan DSM. B, amending Plan DSM to revise the future land use classification of this property from industrial within a community node to community mixed use within a community node. And C, rezoning the property from MX2 mixed use district to MX3 mixed use district to bring an existing restaurant with a drive-through use into conformance with the zoning regulations. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who wants to hear this item discussed? Anyone on the commission? Item number 2 will stay on consent. Item 3 is a request from S&S Home Builders, represented by Nick Stevenson, for the following regarding a parcel located at 902 and 908 31st Street. A, determination as to whether the requested rezone is in conformance with Plan DSM. B, amending Plan DSM to revise the future land use classification of the property from low-density residential to low-medium density residential. And C, rezoning the property from N5 neighborhood district to NX1 neighborhood mixed district to allow the construction of a residential row building. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to hear this item discussed? Anyone on the commission? Number 3 will stay on consent. Number 4 is a request from CS Family Properties, represented by Corey Steiner, for review and approval of a public hearing site plan, Dr. Detailed Tenant Improvements for property located at 3001 Southwest 9th Street, and for a type 2 design alternative to allow an overhead door on the primary frontage facade where it is permitted only on a non-primary or rear facade. Is anyone in the audience interested in hearing this item discussed tonight? Anyone on the commission? Okay, number 4 will also stay on consent. We have an opportunity to move number 6 to consent. I will read that item now. Item 6 is a request from Life Change Church, Inc., represented by Stephen Christensen, for review and approval of a public hearing site plan North Bridge Event Center for property located at 4530 East 46th Street, and for a Type 2 design alternative to allow expansion of a surface parking lot in a front yard where it is only permitted in a rear or limited side yard. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to hear this discussed tonight? Okay, number 6 will remain on public hearing. So the items left on, remaining on consent are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Could I get a motion to move consent?
So moved.
Thanks, Carolyn. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Motion passes. Before we get into the public hearing items, number 7 has been continued indefinitely by the request of the applicant. Because it's getting continued indefinitely, if there's anyone here from the public that was here to speak on that, please know that new notices will be sent out to neighbors when that item becomes active again, if it does. But it will not be discussed tonight. Is that right, Jason?
Yeah, that's correct. The applicant has asked for some time to meet with staff and to maybe see if we can find some common ground. Is there anybody here tonight was for that item? Okay. But we will need a motion and vote by the commission to continue it indefinitely.
I will move.
Thanks, Carolyn.
7.
All in favor for that motion, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And abstentions? Thank you. Moving into the public hearing item. Item number 5 is a request from Mid-Am Energy Company, represented by Benjamin Keith and Mark Lowe, for review and approval of an 8th amendment to the Airport Commerce Park West PUD conceptual plan. Parcel is located at 5700 Thornton Avenue to allow a utility substation, and Saroshi will tell us about this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Saroshi Chakraborty, planning staff. I'll be presenting this item. This is a PUD amendment request for a parcel located at 5700 Thornton Avenue. The request from the applicant is to allow a utility substation use and also to allow additional fencing options. This is the subject property. It's at the corner of Southwest 56th Street and to the south of Park Avenue, and it immediately abuts Thornton Avenue. This is part of a larger PUD, which is the Airport Commerce Park West PUD. It's about 100 acres in size. This particular parcel is just a little over 10 acres. It is owned by Mid-American Energy, and the proposal here is to allow a utility substation use for this particular parcel only. The amendments that have been proposed through this PUD amendment request only pertain to this particular parcel. It does not affect the rest of the PUD area. This is the PUD concept plan, and it shows, as you can see, I'll zoom in a little bit so you're able to see what's going on. This is the larger PUD area. It is primarily proposed to include light industrial uses. The allowed uses through the PUD development standards includes PBP, which is planned business park, and support commercial uses as permitted by our retired zoning code. If you were to compare it with our current zoning code, it would be closest to the EX mixed use district. So again, light industrial in nature, and the land use, the proposed future land use for this area is business park. This is the larger PUD area. Just to kind of get you acquainted with the area, this is Southwest 63rd Street, And this is Park Avenue. This is the larger PUD. The area that we are talking about with this amendment is the parcel that's right here. And you can kind of see the conceptual sketch that has been provided with the concept document. The amendments are highlighted in red. Again, I'll zoom in a little bit so you're able to see it better. As you can see here, these are the PUD development standards, and a lot of the details within the PUD are articulated under these development standards, including the uses. So as you can see here, number 9 is highlighted, and it says an electric utility substation shall be permitted use only on lot 15 of the Airport Commerce Park West Plat 2. So this is the first part of the amendment. The second part of the proposed amendment involves the allowing some additional options with respect to the fencing or the wall around the utility substation. And so for this, you can see here there's an exception made for lot 14. The fencing that's allowed within the PUD is limited to a wrought iron black coated 75% open fence design that should not be more than 8 feet in height, and no fencing taller than 3 feet located closer than 15 feet to the public street right away and the property line. So there is an exception to that to allow in lot 14 solid brick, cement block, or other solid panel type fencing materials. Also, the fencing may be up to 12 feet in height. So it's providing additional options with respect to the fence material as well as the height of the fencing. The applicant does not currently have a finalized design or elevations to share, but they have provided us some examples of similar treatment within the metro area. So I will share those pictures here with you. You can see one here. Here's the other one. And then there is a third one. So the applicant's intent is to design something that's comparable to what's shown here, just to give you an idea. So with that, I want to move over to staff rationale and staff recommendation. As you saw, the amendment request is providing some additional allowance with respect to height and material of the fencing. In the drawing, the concept drawing that we reviewed, staff did see that the utility substation was set back as far as was possible. So with that, it's significantly set back from the street frontage. So that is something staff would like to note. Also, because of the unique nature of the fencing of the substation, it's you can say it's kind of a hybrid between a fence and a wall. So it's because of its unique character, it also requires some unique consideration in terms of design. And the applicant has met with the neighborhood and discussed some of their concerns, and they have come up with something that addresses some of their concerns as well as matches some of the existing similar fencing treatments that they have done in the metro area. So because of these reasons, staff is supportive of this amendment request to allow additional fencing materials so long as the final design and placement of the fencing is in accordance with a PUD development plan that is approved by the Planning and Urban Design Administrator. As far as the utility substation use, I mentioned before that the allowed uses within this PUD were primarily planned business park and support commercial uses. This is comparable to the EX district. And within an EX district, similar utility type uses could be allowed either through a conditional use or by right. So given those reasons, staff believes that the proposed use of a utility substation is appropriate for this parcel. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the requested 8th amendment to the Airport Commerce Park West PUD, subject to the condition that I just mentioned here, that the final design and placement of the fence shall be in accordance with an approved PUD development plan and approved by the Planning and Urban Design Administrator. The applicant conducted a couple of neighborhood meetings, one of them required through our rezoning process, and here is a summary of some of the discussions that they had. I'm going to let you scan through this, but the applicant will also go into more detail and share what they discussed and if they made any particular changes to their design as a result of the feedback that they received. So here you can see some of the actions that Mid-American took in order to address some of the issues that were brought forward by the neighbors. This is the sign-in sheet. The applicant also provided a detailed presentation during the neighborhood meeting. I will not go into that. Perhaps the applicant can talk a little bit more about what was discussed at the meeting. I'm going to move forward to the letter of support that they did receive from the Airport Commerce Park Design Committee, and this is their support of the proposed amendment. We received a couple comment cards from the neighbors to the immediate south. And this is the consent map. I would like to add, I was not able to show this in the other maps, but I would like to point out that the PUD area, the proposed uses and the existing uses are light industrial, but there is a residential subdivision to the southwest that's tucked in here. And so that is why the applicant did outreach with the neighbors who live directly to the south and might be impacted as a result of the proposed changes. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
The CAD drawing seems to indicate high-power transmission lines. Are those raised, and are they actually planned to go over the neighborhood as it looks like on the CAD drawing?
Yes, they are expected to be above ground. That was one of the concerns that was brought by the neighbors, if they could be buried. However, due to safety and cost reasons, Mid-American made the decision that they could not be buried, but they could probably elaborate that on that a little bit more. But the intent is to leave them above ground.
When they said cost is an issue, what cost was cited as too costly?
I would defer that to the applicant. I don't have the numbers in the neighborhood meeting summary. That was the reasoning that the applicant provided. This particular issue was brought forward before them, and they made the determination that because of safety as well as cost concerns, it was not a practical solution to put them underground.
In safety, when they said safety, when you were assessing the validity of the comment on safety, how did you view safety? And number two, because we had a lot of utility underground discussions now 4 years ago, what was the standard that the city used to evaluate that as appropriate argument for it being too costly?
Well, I mean, usually one of the overriding factors with the transmission, is it a major transmission line versus just a service line? Those are kind of the bigger picture things that drive our discussions when we're doing site plans and looking at underground stuff. But I think the applicant is probably best positioned to kind of walk us through the thought process and the details of why they're laying it out this way. So I'd encourage us to move on to let them go into the detail.
Well, then I'll ask again later what the city rationale is, which is the purpose of my question. When we're looking at safety and looking at cost, what is the city rationale to validate whether or not their claim of safety and cost is appropriate? So I can defer that and wait, but that will come back up.
Please.
I note that the site includes 10.4 acres, which is a sizable, parcel of land. My question is about the landscaping. Did this topic come up in the neighborhood discussion at all? And if so, what was the discussion? What was, give me an idea of what the discussion was about and how it was resolved.
Yes, I'll pull this up right here. There was discussion about landscaping. I believe it was right here. Yes, as you can see here, there were a few things that were discussed. There was discussion about sidewalks, burial of transmission lines, grass plantings, increased size of trees, and preservation of existing trees and brush along the property lines. Those were explicitly some of the communication that came in from the neighbors in advance of the meeting. And then Mid-American talked about their plans with respect to landscaping. They would have to go through a site planning process, which would require them to meet the city's landscaping standards. Additionally, these are some of the things that the applicant is proposing. They are looking into the size of trees and believes that they're trying to look for similarly sized diameter trees in order to ensure that that particular request is made.
When I saw the pictures that Mid-American had provided, they showed a very naturalistic kind of, lawn, not a lawn, but a natural grasses and so forth and so on. Did the neighbors find that appealing, attractive, appropriate, or was there any other discussion? I ask because that's not necessarily something that one would expect to see, and I'm just interested if there was any pushback from the neighbors at all along that line.
I will defer that question to the applicant. They can probably provide a better feedback on what sort of comments they receive from the neighbors with respect to those pictures.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Sriyoshi? Okay, thank you. The applicant can now come forward. You have 10 minutes to present. Please state your name and address and sign in on that paper to your right when you're finished.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you all for being here. My name is Kelsey Ballard. I work in the project development area of Mid-American, and so thanks, Sriyoshi, for setting that up for me. What brought us here tonight is we have a substation along Park Avenue in Des Moines that was built in the 1950s. It's on a small 1-acre tract of land, and with demand growing in that area, including future development, ongoing development of this industrial park, also including the airport expansion. When our engineering teams looked at that existing substation on that footprint, they determined that it didn't have the capacity to reliably serve those loads. So we started looking for an additional place to buy, a new place to purchase to put a replacement substation. So when we're looking to buy a substation, one of the initial criteria is adjacent to existing transmission lines. So the lines that run along the bottom of the screen there today have been in place for decades The area where Monarch Cement is was actually one of the first early industrial areas that was electrified in Des Moines, and these lines, those easements go back to that time. So when you look back on like DNR maps, and you can really see that industrial area develop, and those lines were essential in that development then, and those easements still exist for us today. So when we look at tapping into those existing lines, we're looking quite honestly for a piece of land that's for sale. This was a size that would accommodate our new modern substations with modern equipment, improving reliability, improving safety, giving our crews the parts here locally that they're used to working with on other modern substations across our footprint. So after we purchased the property, we had some initial conversation with the developer about this PUD, and then moved forward with the purchase and started working with neighbors pretty quickly afterwards. So the initial plan didn't look much like that at all. And so as we continued working with neighbors, we were also asked by the city to to consider a future possible relocation to Southwest 56th. So the site plan that is in front of you today is really over a year's worth of effort with our partners at the city, with our partners in the commercial area, and the residential neighbors partnering with us as well. So I'm pretty proud of all the work that's gone in to get us to this point. So as Friyoshi noted, the PUD amendment piece is really the two sentences. There's not a lot of substance to it, but we do still know that we have to work with staff and do the site planning, but we've tried to get as much of that out in discussion and on this paper for you tonight. So do you want me to try and answer questions in advance? Okay. So transmission lines are our high voltage lines. So they're like the highways of electricity. They're moving more power, longer distances to serve bulk amounts of people. So these lines, we do have a few underground in the heart of downtown Des Moines. They require large spaces underground for our engineers to work because they're working with hotter lines. It's also something I think you all probably know. There are hit lines in our roads and corridors every day. A hit line of this voltage is life or death, and probably not life. So we do put them in the air, and we keep them there at clearances that are approved by the National Electrical Safety Code, adopted by the Iowa Utilities Board. And that clearance ability really keeps everyone safe around it. So for these high voltage lines, there's a huge aspect of safety. On these lines in particular, we do have easement rights here that are for above ground transmission use. And what we were able to do with this substation location, you can kind of see, is actually V those transmission lines into the site, actually moving them further away from some of the residences. Due to the proximity of the airport, we will have to get some FAA permitting, and so final height and details on some of that stuff is still upcoming just due to that FAA permitting piece there, and making sure we've got all of that in accordance with what they're looking for. In terms of landscaping, I think this is quite a few trees and bushes. I think the count is 500-ish between the two. That was certainly not an initial thought for this property, but I do think it balances well with the area and is in conformity with the PUD that actually calls for more vegetation with more open space. So on the grasses, our plan is really just a consistent grasscape, and that's what the conversation we had with the neighbors. So throughout the information we've shared, we've had this concept of Southwest 56th on there. And so there were some questions about were we going to like landscape that part or do grass. Really, our plan is this for the landscaping, and then the grass will be consistent. And lawn grass is our plan. The pictures of the substation that you saw is up in Grimes along Highway 141, and that's not a mowed area. So it's got more of the native grass, native vegetation around it. I did notice in one of the comments something about wanting the existing south lot line cleaned up now. We do have some foresters going out to do that, and we've got crews working on that. So. Yeah, thank you.
Stay.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
So,
Well, go ahead.
so whatever the landscaping is, you'll continue to maintain it?
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, you bet.
So what happens to the existing substation site?
Yeah, good question. It is on a hill, so we will decommission that site. We've done all different things with those decommissioned sites. It's about an acre. I don't know if you're familiar with the area, but it's like kind of up on top of a hill, about an acre. So we'll, assuming that decommissioning goes well, we get everything removed that we want to on a timeline that works. We would talk to neighbors or city or look for something to do with it. So if you have an idea, we could certainly consider that. But it just being up on that hill, we need to expand the footprint, and it would mess with drainage of the surrounding buildings, and it doesn't make sense.
Thank you.
Yep.
Was curious on a few things. You said that there are high power transmission lines that are undergrounded in Des Moines and other places.
So I think there's 69 kV underground in downtown Des Moines. And then there's a small piece that I know of in the Quad Cities as well. But we own and operate about 5,000 miles of transmission. It's like the underground part of it doesn't even show up in a percent. I mean, the vast majority of transmission is above ground. So when when I was talking about cost in here, repair costs are important, maintaining cost. And so when you have transmission lines above ground, if you have a storm event or a fault event, someone can go up and visually see, hey, that's where the problem is, and make sort of a quick fix. I'm not a lineman or an engineer, so I don't really know how quick it is. But to me, they're putting the line together. If we have a fault underground, those are much harder to locate because you can't see underground. And so the cost to then excavate that, look for that, do we need to, put all new cable in? Can we splice the cable? What does that look like? And that not only impacts cost, but also restoration time. Transmission lines and substations are what give us the ability, if there's a storm event or an outage here, to make sure that we can reroute power to keep more lights on more often.
What's the break rate differential between above ground, underground? Underground, theoretically, especially with the increased storms that we have, should have a lower probability of break. Therefore, our issue of restoring should be less if it doesn't break as often. Are we saying that the actual underground and the overground break at the same rate?
I don't have that information.
And when you said that safety of an overhead is, are you saying that safety of overhead is safer than underground, or is the safety, why would the underground, I understand fault identification theoretically in older systems would be harder to actually identify where a break is.
Yep.
But in, I guess, current systems, are you saying that the underground is actually safer to, or is it more dangerous to actually go and service than the above ground, or it's just easier to service above ground? So an argument was identified that overhead lines are safer.
Yep.
And from an actual service perspective, you're saying that overhead lines are safer to service.
Yes.
But it sounds like the argument is not that it's safer to service, it's harder to find a fault with the type of sensing we have currently. We'd have to excavate farther in sensing currently, but it doesn't sound like there's a safety issue. What is the actual safety issue that causes underground lines to be more dangerous?
Yeah, so I think it's someone planting a tree and hitting those lines. And while that's unfortunate if it's the service line to your house, that's a major incident if it's carrying 69,000 volts.
Is that a common occurrence to hit a transmission line? I would assume, shouldn't they be further down in the same way they're further up if they're above ground?
I don't have that information, but I do know to go further down, we would have to disrupt more width, which I'm not sure is available in this case.
Okay. And then transmission lines are actually statistically significantly impactful to property values, and running high-powered transmission lines over neighborhoods is reasonably expected to cause an economic impact. Was that evaluated in this plan, or has that been raised with anyone in this plan that would be affected?
Yeah, I actually look at those statistics all the time, including assessed property values. And so statistically speaking, we don't see that. In fact, in properties like this commercial area, developers are looking to buy near energy infrastructure. They're looking for that reliability. So we see it the other way.
With neighborhoods? Because you're going over a neighborhood, I get the commercial side.
Yep.
For the neighborhood, you're saying neighborhoods do not have a statistically significant impact in overhead power lines on property value?
Yep,
Is that catchment just where you analyze that? Is that just Iowa?
correct. Our service territory. Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
Yep.
I've got a couple questions. Where is the existing substation at relative to the current substation?
Yeah,
I was
it's
looking on the map.
just north and west,
On
so.
Willowmere there?
Yep,
Okay.
so Paws and Pints, and then
Yep.
the substation sits just beyond that.
Okay, and then also looking at the map, it appears that there are currently, I don't know if they're medium voltage or high voltage, running just right along that property line between the neighborhood and the commercial
Correct.
space. So
Yep, they're there
are,
today.
and is it similar, 60 kVA?
Yep,
So there already are,
yep. And we've got
Same.
those easements that are decades old that allow us to continue being there.
Okay.
Yep, so,
so these aren't getting massively larger or
nope,
anything
they
like that?
won't be the big,
Okay.
345 is our highest voltage on our system. They're not that.
Okay. And then, Chris, just on your comment about the lines buried below, typically those are encased in concrete if they would be 60 kVA, just for knowledge.
Thank you.
So what is the cost differential of undergrounding versus overgrounding? I mean, we've cited it as a reason, and so I'm curious when we're saying, hey, it's more, because every time we had this underground discussions, I was like, oh man, it always costs too much, costs too much, costs too much. But if they are encased underneath, they are encased in concrete, that seems to eliminate the concern of a tree planting through them, right? There seems to be that we can actually underground these stuff safely. So what is the actual cost differential of undergrounding versus overgrounding?
But I think what we've found is it's very case by case. As we've reviewed site plans and it's when we're dealing with like a service line, or maybe it's a line that powers a couple street lights and that's it. It's relatively inexpensive and usually can be absorbed into a project. Where it becomes more challenging is where it is these more larger transmission lines that have a larger expense associated with them. In our criteria for the type 1 design alternative to waive that, I believe we have a reference to 10% of the project budget. That's kind of a rule of thumb that we were using before we added that to the code. But some of the other criteria too is impact on other property owners. Is it, transmission, again, is it a transmission line versus some of these other minor things? So those, this is a large facility, so I think we were comfortable with staff, and it is there today. It actually predates the residential neighborhood that's relatively new to the area.
I'm just saying we've accepted the argument of safety, but it sounds like it's more operational cost and maintenance cost is the issue. We've accepted the argument that it is more costly to underground than overground. I'm just curious, what's the actual cost if we've accepted that? What was the rationale
It
for
sounds
it?
like they can't provide that cost.
So we don't know the cost, but it's in the report that says that's a factor that we're accepting as saying, yep, it is more costly, inappropriately costly.
I'm not saying we're accepting it. I'm just saying it doesn't appear like they can provide a cost.
Okay, I'm just saying it's presented as a fact in our report. That's all. My point is we're saying it's a fact that it is more costly otherwise, fine. If we're saying it's not safe, okay, but it sounds like we're saying those aren't
I think what we're saying as staff
realities.
is that we find the proposal reasonable, given the existence, given the scale of the service line, given that it already exists in this area, and they're simply moving the line up. It seemed reasonable to us, and that's the extent of our analysis into the proposal.
Anyone else have any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Please
Thank
do
you.
sign in if you didn't already. Okay, is there anyone in the audience this evening who would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Anyone neutral? I know you know the routine.
Hi, my name is Carol Maher. I live in Ward 3 downtown in the Equitable Building. This young lady, Ms. Ballard, was asking about recommendations on the decommissioned site. I would say go for native plantings, especially if it's on an incline. That would be a great solution. It wasn't clear. I hope when the site plan is presented that the setbacks will be clearly delineated, especially on the south side that runs into the neighborhood, because that's a little bit of a build that wall look to me. So it'd be great if it was further setback and with some nice plantings to hide that wall. And then while the applicant is replacing the sidewalk on Thornton, I think the commission should consider requiring them to pay for and pay for and install the sidewalk on Southwest 56th Drive when that street is reconfigured by the city. I think that should be a cost borne by the applicant. And I don't know, other times we put things in escrow or how that works, or maybe it can be a requirement on the site plan or at this process. But I think that would be a good solution to work to get more sidewalks in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak in a neutral manner on this topic? Anyone opposed? Okay. Applicant, you do have 5 minutes if you want to address anything that was said. Okay. Thank you. I will now close the public hearing and open it up to the commission for discussion and motions.
I did like Carol's note, and I wrote that down myself earlier, was about the sidewalk on Southwest 56th Street, if that would be required at this time or with future development. I think that is important.
Staff, can you guys clarify whether that sidewalk would be required on the site plan anyway?
Shreyoshi, do you know much about the timing of the realignment of the road? Because
It's a future city project, but right now it's not in the CIP.
Mike, I think Mike has the answer. Mike Ludwig, Deputy Director.
Michael Ludwig, Deputy Director of Development Services for the City of Des Moines. As far as Southwest 56th Street realignment goes, that's the preferred alignment at this time. It could change slightly. And so I do believe there's substantial grading that will have to occur to actually build that roadway. Put a sidewalk in now, chances of that getting torn out with the street construction are probably pretty high. And so it seems like it would be kind of a waste to construct the sidewalk now and then have it torn out at a future time. At the time that roadway is connected, it's anticipated to be a capital improvement project by the city. At that time, a future council can decide whether or not they want to assess or assign any portion of the cost to adjoining property owners. But that would be a decision to be made at that time. So at this point, it's not really, by staff viewed as necessary to have the sidewalk put in at that location at this time.
Yeah, I think the comment was about in future, not immediately, but with the redevelopment. So it was all just a suggestion. But
yeah.
I totally understand, doesn't make sense to do it right now.
Right. And so I think future council could decide if they wanted to assign costs to adjoining property owners. Thank you.
I move staff.
Thank you, Francis. We have a motion to move staff. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Opposed? And pass? Thank you. We will now move to item number 6. Sean will present this. It's a request from Life Change Church, represented by Stephen Christensen, for review and approval of a public hearing site plan, Northbridge Event Center, for property located at 4530 East 46th Street, for a type 2 design alternative to allow expansion of surface parking lot in a front yard where it is only permitted in a rear or limited side yard.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Shauna Barron, Planning Staff for the City of Des Moines. This item is for the Northbridge Event Center, located, as we said, 4530 East 46th Street. Tonight we will be discussing the proposed expansion of surface parking in the front yard. This item may look familiar to you as it was heard by the Commission in March of 23. At that time, the Commission approved the plan, however, with fewer parking spaces, subject to reserving the land nearest East 46th Street for a potential future building, which would have made their parking lot compliant at that time. Since then, a change in partnership and land ownership has led the applicant to the current request due to an increased number of projected participants. So this is the notice map showing the subject property. Site photo on the north side of the parcel looking west. They have currently started construction on the building and we'll call phase 1 of the parking lot. At the intersection of Hubble and East 46th Street, looking northwest. This is their site plan. On this site plan, you can see the parking lot that was approved in their original site plan. All of the landscaping that is grayed out was proposed and approved with that site plan initially. Their current proposal is to add additional parking in the space originally reserved for future construction of a building. They've added a row of shrubs along the northern edge of their parking lot at the request of the neighbor to the north who wanted the fence requirement waived. And then they will also be adding a line of street trees to continue down East 46th Street and wrap around along Hubble Avenue as well. They have complied with all of the landscaping requirements per city code. This is the consent map. We did not receive any complaints about this project. Staff feels that the current parking projections that they are anticipating could have a negative impact on that rural cross-section of East 46th Street. That is between Hubble Avenue, which is a state highway, and the traffic circle on East Broadway Avenue. Due to the change, this is why staff is now recommending support of this project. Are there any questions?
Are you able to refresh the history on this? Because I thought that part of the agreement was that there was going to be something else in that northeast corner, is that right?
Correct. Originally, that was the proposal. The land was owned by the event center first, and they had partnered with a smaller church function, so they weren't anticipating as much user or activity on site. Since then, the event center donated the land to Life Change Church. Life Change Church does have a larger participant count. They're anticipating 300, in addition to their wedding venue that they plan to do there as well. And so the added participant needs are what is driving the additional parking. And now that the land is donated to the church, they are requesting to use it for parking instead of any future building.
And was there any, I mean, it's a brand-new building that's being put in. It's now land that's accessible to put a building, which is where it was wanted to be before.
Correct.
So we're saying that, well, we just conveniently have the building in the wrong place now, so we may as well fill in that spot of parking? Like, that could be a cynical way to look at this in some ways, right?
Correct. But the ownership of the land is different now. So it went from an event center owning the land where a potential future building could have happened to the church owning the land, and now they have no desire to put another building.
I think at the end of the day, I mean, we had our own discussions about this and different thoughts about how we got to this point. But what drove us to make this recommendation is just concern for impact on the neighbors who, with the rural cross-section, you know, normally when we're looking at parking and suggesting people are providing too much parking and that they should be looking for shared parking opportunities or relying on on-street parking. In this case, we don't have on-street parking. We have a rural cross-section, and we don't have really anything for them for us to say, you should share your neighbor's lot for overflow. So that concern for how it impacts the neighbors is what drove us to recommend approval this time.
Any other questions for staff?
I did have a question too, since I was not on the commission at that time. This building footprint was planned at that time. What was the intent of the building use on the corner where the parking expansion is being proposed?
That I'm not sure. I was not part of the original review team either, so I'm not sure exactly what was discussed at that time.
I can,
Thank you.
yeah, it was never really defined. So we do have a large-scale development plan for this site that shows there being 2 parcels, so one out at the corner at the Hubble. So that's still on the books as far as, you know, if we get another site plan or proposal or plating activities coming in. But the developer never had anything specific in mind. It was us on the staff side that said, you have more land than you need. You have plenty of parking. Let's reserve that for a building, maybe sell it off for a future phase. At that time, you wouldn't need this. If that building was there, you wouldn't need this relief. So it was kind of a way to mitigate the relief. And the site is under construction, so even though this drawing shows the building footprint, you know, like is a drawing, that building is basically there.
I have a quick question. The design alternative that is requested is just for the location of the additional parking, right? Not the number of additional parking spots?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay, thanks, Shauna. The applicant is asked to come up. You've got 10 minutes to present if you'd like. Please state your name and address and sign in on the white sheet when you're finished.
Yeah. I'm Steve Christensen. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here. 1904 5th Street Southwest in Altoona is my address.
And Robert Kramer, I'm the developer and the one that donated the land to the church. My address 2721 South 40 Lane in Adel. So I do appreciate it. I wanted you to see that Steve's a real person but I can probably answer the question because I've got more history. Just to add to what Shauna said, I didn't really understand exactly why the city really felt so strongly about keeping that open space along the street. It was, now I understand better, that it was wanting to have a building and have parking behind. I understand that's kind of a good goal. But I think we win the prize for the most unique shaped piece of property in Des Moines, with this very strange shape. And the next page showed where the tree line is. That triangle has trees on both sides. And so it really lent itself to pushing this event center back into the trees. Do you have, maybe, yeah, there. So it's got woods on both sides. We can do outdoor weddings. The detention pond is to the left of the building there. That has to be at the low point. That's kind of where the lot slopes to. So that's what really drove putting that building there. But the city was saying, hey, we want to be able to have a building along the street in the future, so they asked us last year to stay away 150 feet off of East 46th. We had the change. We were working with a small church. Now we're working with Life Change and have donated the land to them. And they're running 150 to 170 people right now, had over 300 on Easter. The capacity of the building could actually be 400, just seating in a church-style seats. So we just said, we've got to have parking somewhere. And we looked at that space, the open space between that and Hubble, and we are kind of keeping that back for if the church would do any expansion, they could build there, and that would actually block more view than up on 46th, because you could kind of block the view from Hubble. There is a nice berm along 46th, so I feel like it's a win really for the neighbors as well. We had the neighborhood meeting. We invited 20 or 25, I think only 7 came. They didn't have any concerns about the parking. They would rather, I believe, have the parking here than trying to fight them on the street, in those kind of situations. So I'll answer any questions you have.
As I remember it, when you came first of all here, staff had recommended a parking lot, and I think you referred to it, sort of behind the building in a way. And the concern that you had was that for events and so forth, you wanted to have some kind of a view that was interesting and pleasant. And so my question is, have you done anything there to the southwest of the rear of the building to facilitate or to make that view into something that you use and is successful?
Yes, we also had to have a detention pond, so we put that detention pond to that west, very west part, and it's going to be a nice feature with fountain, kind of, grass around it. And then to the north of the building there, we just put the sod down yesterday or the day before. It's a nice big open green space that you could do outdoor weddings and then come inside for a reception. So it's one of the few places in Des Moines where you could do both indoor and outdoor weddings. So we feel like that's the best way to use that funky triangle, was to get the building down there. It would have been very difficult to get the parking down in there and try to navigate that, and we would not have had a nice outdoor space for our event center.
Any other questions? Thank you. Please do sign in if you didn't already.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Anyone neutral or opposed?
Hi, I'm still Carol Maher. I live in Ward 3 downtown in the Equitable Building. I was here when this item was brought up, and one of the things that Commissioner Page asked, specifically if any trees were going to be torn down, and he was told no. But you'll see, if you read through the detail, there's a whole heck of a lot of trees that were torn down and are being replaced. And the setback was 150 feet, as been mentioned, and is now going to be 26 feet. I don't think the city was requesting the building. I could have sworn it was the applicant, but maybe it was the city saying to put in a building. But at the time, I asked several questions about over-parking it, and now this supersized, and I was hoping that the applicant would, I presume the building had already been built, and I was hoping the applicant would bring data showing this many times the parking lot has been inadequate. But I found out tonight that the building is not built yet, and they haven't used the existing parking lot, so there isn't really anything other than their gut to tell them that the parking lot they have is inadequate, which is disappointing. And I would hope that when you approve this, that, you know, perhaps look for some ways to make all that concrete less concrete-y, maybe with some permeable pavers or other options to facilitate a more natural feel, because one of the things is nature that they want and be able to look at and such. And then I don't remember if there was a discussion on sidewalks on 46th Street. It is a curbless, two-lane street that certainly you can't walk, if you want to walk on there, you got to walk in the street. It would be interesting to know if we're okay with not having sidewalks there. Thank you.
Just to clarify, they are required to have sidewalk, it looks like it's in.
Okay, great.
Madam Chair, to follow up on this, the comments that Carol, Ms. Muller had, this is the site plan that we are approving, as I understand it. And could we have the plan up on the screen again, please?
Madam Chair, I would just make sure we close public hearing first before we have any commissioner comments. Just heads
Okay,
up.
can you hold that until we close the public hearing?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, for sure.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to this proposal? Okay, now I will close the public hearing and ask you to pick back up.
And thank you for bringing it on the screen. So this is the site plan that we're looking at, and help me out, which is the dark color the one that's already approved and the white color is the one that's being asked for, or is it vice versa?
It's vice versa. The white is been approved, the dark gray is what's being proposed now.
The dark gray is being proposed now?
Yes.
How detailed is that? I mean, I can't see, are there islands there? Are there trees proposed there? I'm asking because as a follow-up to...
Yeah, what they're showing is compliant with our landscape standards.
I apologize, I realize I made a mistake procedurally. The applicant does have 5 minutes to address the concerns if you would like.
Thank you. Good call.
My apologies as well.
I appreciate the opportunity and thank you for your concerns. So when Robert and Northbridge Event Center began this in March, we just had our first meetings with them and did not have a partnership with them in any way. We've been at the Iowa State Fair for 6.5 years. So our parking situation has been unlimited. We pretty much have unlimited parking because we're right on Grand inside the Iowa State Fair. There's plenty of data. We've had no less than 400 to 600 person events every single year that we've hosted and that we host throughout the year. So we do quite a bit for our community. We're connected to all of our public schools, including the new ones, Delaware, that we're going to be near. So we do have quite a bit of data on our parking, needing between 70 to 120 spots every week. And so that's the reason. We knew that as we partnered with Robert, we looked at the data and said, right now during the summer we're at Grandview University. I also am a chaplain there and work there. And so we knew there was no way that we could possibly fit, nor could we have community events, which are one of our largest goals is for community engagement. That's what we do. And so we host Halloween events. As I said, we've hosted food events for people to come get food. So we knew that we were going to need the extra parking for that. for those events as well, because there is no off-site parking. There's nowhere to park along the street, there's nowhere to park along Hubble, and so we knew that it was going to be nearly virtually impossible for us to meet with the existing parking that we had, and that is why Robert and Northbridge agreed to say, hey, let's submit this and do that. We did add a sidewalk. We're going to have a sign on the edge, and just for future, as the land was donated to us, our goal is to build either hopefully a community center with counseling services that will be able to serve the community, and in both of those ways. That's one of the things that we do have as an agenda. We want to be a blessing to our community and to be able to help with resources that would be needed in our community. And so that's a future plan. We don't know that's for sure, but that's something that we would like to do, and that would be on that southeast corner of Hubble and 46th. That parcel of, that piece of land right there is where we would probably put that building. And so this would already give us the parking for a community center that would be used daily. Our goal is to be a daily used church. We don't want to be just a once a week. And so that's kind of the future plans.
Thank you.
Okay.
So where's the expansion occurring then? Where's the planned expansion occurring?
The corner. Corner of.
Yeah, come up to the
Go
microphone,
down.
please.
If you'll keep going south, that corner right there would be where we'd build a community center with counseling services is our goal.
So are you saying this parking here is suitable for that future building plan? So you're overbuilding now for the option of having something
That's what we
later?
believe, yeah.
So if you just instead had the parking lot for appropriate for current use and maybe just built where it was originally intended, that's not an option?
So what did you ask?
Do you need the parking now for the
Yeah.
site you have now, or do you need the parking for your future expansion?
No, we need it now. Well, that's what I said at the beginning.
So when you
There's no
expanded-
way for us to be able to fit parking. People would try to park on the street. Of course, we wouldn't allow it, but
So when you expand in the future, will you not need more parking?
there's a chance. I don't think so, because a community center is not going to be hundreds upon hundreds of people at a time. So church is only used on Sundays, so on Sunday mornings. So we think that that would be enough parking throughout the week to come to a community center or to have counseling services, because counseling services, again, would be, if we had 4 or 5 counselors, would be 4 or 5, people that would be coming to it. So it wouldn't be large number of people coming at any time.
So we basically have, for the most part, we have a big patch of unused concrete that will be partially used the rest of the time, right?
Well, it'll be used completely on Sundays.
1/7 of the week, right?
And then all weddings that are there as well. My son's the first wedding there, and we anticipate that most of that parking lot. Well, we wouldn't have enough parking the other way.
Have you guys requested pervious pavement like Carol's recommending, or is the city preventing that? Like, if you were
What's
to
that?
put in pervious surfaces, have you proposed pervious? Sorry? No kidding, sorry, I'll back up. Have you guys proposed pervious surfaces like Carol was recommending, or are you not allowed to put in pervious surfaces?
That'd be a
or-
Robert question.
So we didn't look at it too closely. I've seen those before. It's a lot more expensive, but we've got that detention pond, and it was designed to catch all the water from this additional parking as well, from and from the building's roof. So, and it's a nice water feature, and so I feel like that was a better way to catch the water and hang on to it rather than pervious system.
So a pervious system was not proposed, and you would be opposed to one if it was asked for?
Yes.
Okay.
If there's no further questions, oh, please.
May I come back to can we scroll down a little bit to get the whole parking lot here on the monitor? Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you. So the white part to the left, or I guess it's to the west of the one that's proposed, is that a true representation of the landscaping as it exists today?
Yes.
So we approved that for 73 spaces, but it sure looks like to me to the one to the east has more landscaping features than the one that we approved back when we approved the one to the west. And Jason, you say that what's being requested meets the city standards for a parking lot of this size, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so it just meets the standards, or it exceeds?
I'm not sure. I think some of it exceeds because there was additional landscaping to offset not having a fence along the north for the neighbor. So I think there are aspects of this that exceed our standards, but as far as like islands, that's compliant.
Well, that's what interested me too. I think that if we approve this to the left, it doesn't look like it's been, landscaped as much. I think that approving what they ask for now is appropriate. Thank you. But the islands here in the middle are more equally spaced than what it looks more densely landscaped than right here.
There's a run or two there a little further apart. That's accurate.
Thank you.
Okay, I will again close the public hearing portion and open it up for more discussion and motions. Thank you. We've got a motion to approve staff's recommendation. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All opposed? And anyone passing? Okay, thank you. The motion passes. Do we have any committee or staff reports tonight?
None. Thank you.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we actually vote on that? No. Okay. Thank you.